Hello, hello. Welcome back to the stream, everybody. It's good to be with you today. It's a bright Tuesday and still pretty hot here in California, but today should be the last hot day. So I've been sweating this past week or so. Today, we've got a really good stream for you guys because it's a great example to show you guys how the Power Farm works. And you guys are going to get to see kind of a window onto the back end of what me and my devs are able to do as admins to be able to optimize the protocol and the APY on the protocol. So I got one of my other wallets connected today. You can see this one actually has a nice chunk of change already deposited. So you know that I'm a person that doesn't just tell you to put money on the platform. I actually have a good chunk of change here as well from my own personal savings. Looking at the APYs look good. Next thing to do is go ahead and look at the statistics page and just notice what the utilization rate is for all the pools. So utilization rate for Ethereum is 87%. That's fine. We're actually targeting 80% in that pool, but since there's so much money in the pool, we can actually start targeting a 90% utilization rate. So we are going to go over that today. And then the other pools have got 50,000 or less, so we are targeting an 80% utilization rate, and we're actually right there at 80 or within 2% of 80%. So from a utilization perspective, things look good. Next thing to do is go look at power farms. And so you can see today our power farms on Ethereum, and then 2 out of 3 of our USD ones are actually slightly in the negative 1.7%, and then minus 3.7 and 3.45% on the other two. And so we already checked the utilization rate, so we know utilization is where it's supposed to be. So so we know this isn't because somebody just decided to borrow up too much of the pool. And so the only other thing it could be is that the APY, the source APY from Pendle, has dropped. So let's go ahead and go over to Pendle and we can look at our two pools. Here's the two pools we're using on Arbitrum. We got our EtherFi pool right here, and we can see that the APY has dropped to 10.7%. And it was just like 17% yesterday, but we know that this is expected behavior because, you know, this started at like 1,000% APY and then it goes down, and this is just because it's a new pool. So this pool was just deployed like a week ago, and that's naturally how it happens. You know, as more people pile into the pool, it goes back to the equilibrium, and we know that the equilibrium was about 5% APY. And we would expect that as this pool gets closer toward the end, right now there's 106 days left, but as it gets closer to the end, we would expect it to be closer to 5% APY because that's what it was before, and there's no reason for that to change unless the market has somehow changed. So right now we are targeting 80% utilization rates and a I believe it's 8% APY. Yes, that's correct. So we're targeting 80% utilization and 8% APY. That is with what the APY is set to on our pools. But you can see it's borrowed more than 80%. It's at 87%. So what borrowers are actually paying, we could just look at the protocol right here. They're actually paying 11.7%. And that is why it's slightly negative on the power farms, because they're getting 11.7%, but they're paying 10.74%. So that's why it's either close to negative APY or negative APY there. So they're paying 1% more to borrow than what they're actually getting from the source. So APY in pools is determined by a curve, and so this is something that all lending protocols need. Lending protocols need a way to determine what APY are we charging the borrowers. And usually it's on some type of curve where the more of the pool that's borrowed up, the higher the APY is, because you want to ensure that that the pool isn't completely borrowed up. If we had 100% utilization from people borrowing, then nobody would be able to withdraw their funds. So that's why we want to target an 80% or ideally a 90% utilization rate. So we have a curve as well, and it's a little bit different than other protocols because it's not a flat curve, but it's actually an AI algorithmic curve that can be set in a certain place, but then has some leeway back and forth based on the market conditions. But we as a dev team can set the parameters for that of what we're targeting as far as the utilization rates. So what we need to do now is we need to change this, like the 8%. 8% APY is good because we're still over 8% APY in the source, but we need to change the target utilization from 80% to 90%. And then for the other pool, you can see that the USDE pool is at 9.42% APY. I believe we're targeting 11% APY at 80%, and that's why it's gone negative. Because if we go back to the protocol, like the utilization is correct at 80%, like that's optimal. But unfortunately, people are paying 9 and 10% APY when the source APY has gone down to 9%, has gone down to 9.42%. So we need to also change that APY to 8% at 80% utilization rate. And this is actually something that we've already got queued up by the dev team. This is something that we just initiate from a multi-sig wallet. And then, if enough developers on the Wise team from the multi-sig sign the transaction, then boom, it immediately goes into effect. And so that's the transactions are already queued up. I wanted to do the show and tell, but after the stream, I'll go ahead and confirm that. And then that parameter will be changed. So this is a good segue to actually talk about decentralization and like what admin powers do admins have in Lend and Borrow platforms. So it would be great if we didn't have to have any admin powers at all for the lending platform. There are some protocols like that. For instance, Uniswap. Uniswap is simple enough that there is there's no admin powers when it comes to the swapping back and forth of pools. So when you go to Uniswap and those pools that are set up, those are unchangeable, immutable pools. And there's no admin that can decide to do anything besides this one thing, which is they can add a fee to the swap itself. So you can either accept the fee or not accept the fee. And you could go to another DEX. But as far as how the DEX works, there is no admin power whatsoever. Lending platforms are a little bit more complicated than DEXs, and so that's why there are some necessary admin powers that just have to be there. We don't have the technology to fully decentralize it yet. We're getting there. We're close, but all Lend Borrow platforms have at least some type of parameters as far as how the APY is determined in the pools, and then a few other things like adding pools or removing pools. But the good thing about this is that, the Wise team, we are decentralization maxis. We do everything we possibly can to make it the highest level of decentralization possible. Like, for instance, our smart contracts for our protocols are immutable, which is something crazy because like 90 to 95% of all DeFi contracts and Web3 contracts out there nowadays, they're not immutable. They're proxy upgradable contracts that can be upgraded by a multi-sig, which means they could rug or change it to anything. Luckily, with Wise, we made it as decentralized as possible. And the only admin powers we have are for certain parameters, which are not as risky as having the whole contract can just be replaced or upgraded with one commit. So as far as the APY changing the parameters in the pools, this is actually not a risk to the lenders at all. This only affects the borrowers because let's say we turn the APY down to like really low. Now we only have certain parameters to play with. We can't really like make it go that far down or that far up. But let's just say we set APY to 0 across the board, no matter what. Well, then the only thing that would happen would be lenders would be getting less money. And then borrowers might borrow more, for instance. And there could be a situation if that was all jacked up where everybody borrowed what was available to borrow, and if that happened, then lenders wouldn't be able to withdraw until the APY parameters were set back to force those borrowers to pay back or else being liquidated. So so that's something that could happen, and that's why we have, certain guardrails and parameters on our LASA algorithm, so they just can't be set to anything. And then if we set the APY really high, then all of a sudden lenders are going to start earning higher APY, and that's really just a risk to the borrowers, because they'd be paying higher APY, maybe more APY than they would want to. So the bottom line is that the dev team, just like dev teams on every lending platform, can tweak with the APY as far as what APY is being charged at any certain points of utilization. But we have always got a curve so that as APY or as utilization goes higher, the APY goes higher. So we cannot set this to 0, which would be dangerous for the protocol, because it could at least lock funds until the problem was fixed, because people could borrow funds up to 100% utilization. That's not something that's possible with our LASA curves, because all of our LASA curves go up very high, like higher than 150% APY at 100% utilization. We just have some leeway as far as setting parameters. Like, for instance, what we're going to do to change the parameters today is we are changing the USD parameters from 11% APY at 90% utilization down to 8% APY at 80% utilization. And then on the Ethereum pool, we're not even changing the APY amount. We're just changing the target utilization rate from 80% to 90%. So just small little tweaks there. So hopefully that is an eye into how this stuff works and the reasoning behind it. Everything is based on our source APYs. Like, these source APYs from Pendle are so important because that's what determines the APYs for power farms, and that's what determines the APY that our lenders are going to get. Like, for instance, APY's gone down a little bit. So now you could expect, after these parameters are changed, that ETH APY is going to go down a few percent, and USDC and USDT and DAI APY is going to go down a few percent. That is because everything is coming from the source right here. Now, eventually, I can't wait until we can find better sources of APY. Because Pendle's great, and I love Pendle, but there are some drawbacks to Pendle. Like, for instance, all Pendle pools have a maturity date, which is not something that's necessary to have on all forms of yield. Like, there are certain forms of yield, in fact, all the other ones, that don't have a maturity date on the yield. So, like, for instance, if you are adding some LP to a DEX position, let's say you have an LP position on Uniswap that is, Ether and USDC. There's no maturity date on that position. You're just going to keep on earning until you decide to withdraw. So there's other forms of yield that are like that too. For instance, real world assets. Real world assets are a big thing, that's coming onto the scene now. And many of those, depending on what kind of real world asset it is, will not have maturity dates, and some of them might even be stable APY. Because the other drawback is that this APY is variable, right? It goes up, it goes down. We got to change the APY parameters to make sure that we are efficient. Well, there's some RWAs that just have flat APY, and some of them are really high, like 20% flat APY on stablecoin assets. So I can't wait until more yield sources come onto the scene, and they are coming. Believe me, they are coming, because as better yield sources come onto the scene, then we just plug them into our protocol, and our protocol just gets that much better from it all. But for now, we're using Pendle. Pendle's really, really good. And, there is some, give and pull as far as what to expect with the APY levels. But this is something that's just going to get better and better and better as things go on. And still, we are still offering more than double APY in stablecoins, that of our competitors, mainly Aave. Aave is still 3.5% APY in stablecoins. We're more than double that. Aave is still 2% APY on ETH, and we are 4 times or more than 4 times that with our ETH deposits. So we're not perfect, but we are super duper duper competitive and definitely beating our other lending platform counterparts. So if you learned something today, I would encourage you to start using this platform. This is on Arbitrum. We also have one on Ethereum. The Arbitrum one has better APY right now. And what we really need is more deposits of stablecoins of USDT. We need about 25,000 more USDT. And DAI, we need about 18,300 more DAI so that we can reach that $50,000 mark, which will enable us to have over 10,000 available to borrow at all times, which makes our protocol run smoother. And it's a requirement for the APY to be correctly showing on DeFi Llama, which is a big DeFi analytics site. So that was a lot of information. Let's see how you guys digested that. Christoph says soon 100 ETH in supply. We actually had 100 ETH yesterday, and but somebody removed a tiny little bit. So another half an ETH and we'll be over 100 again. Crypto Dibia says Wise over everything. Absolutely, this is my pick for sure. Obviously, I was the one who put together the team to create the protocol, so I'm biased. In case anybody doesn't know that, I am the founder of Wise. But yeah, so if you guys have any more questions, put them in the chat now because we're going to end really soon. After I do my my educational part about Wise Lending, we are either going to go straight into Q&A and then end, or we're going to do like a market watch and then Q&A and end. So I'll go ahead and do the market outlook real quick here. But if you guys have any last minute questions, be sure to put them in right now because we're going to end the stream right after the market watch unless there's questions. So I told you guys yesterday how I was able to catch a long at the very tippy bottom of this, but then it got stopped out at a few $1,000s profit on this little dump right here when it retested the psychological low, and I did not re-enter. I didn't feel it was safe enough to re-enter. Since that time, you know, we've gone up quite a bit. This is, you know, quite the nice little reversal. And a lot of people are starting to say, like, this is it. Like, now we're going back up to 90,000 or up to 90,000. We're going back up to 65,000, 70,000 Bitcoin, which may or may not be the case. I'm still waiting on the sidelines because I know that there's CPI data coming out tomorrow, Wednesday. We still have the 18th for whether we're going to get rate cuts and how big those rate cuts are going to be if we do get them. So there's a lot of things that could still bring volatility to the market. And really, you know, getting to 58,000, that's nothing. Like we could drop to 44,000 from here and that would be just fine. Like we wouldn't even need like a World War III event for that to happen. That could just happen naturally based off, you know, the formation of what's happened up to this point. So I still am optimistic. And, you know, I'm rooting for Bitcoin to go up, but I'm not trusting this pump quite yet, and I don't think you should be as well. Of course, none of that's financial advice. I am also, the reason why I do this is to just add value to the streams and, you know, hopefully to help some people who are wondering some of the same things I'm wondering. I am an active trader. I do not sell a course or anything like that, and I will never sell a course. So this is just not unbiased opinion because everybody's biased, but it's a no strings attached opinion of just, you know, legitimately what I think about the market and how I'm trading the current markets. So hopefully that was helpful to you guys. Let's see. All right, no more questions. So we're going to go ahead and end the stream there. I will be live again tomorrow. We're live again Monday through Friday. And on Friday, we do a Twitter Spaces instead of a live stream. So hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks for coming out, and I will see you